Catch as catch can wrestling. There were some people who asked me my opinion of catch wrestling, and I'm going to say a little bit about catch wrestling and what catch wrestling is. There is something that I will say in the last installment of this particular, or the next installment of this particular series or of the particular series of BJJ on BJJ concerning catch wrestling. But this particular one is going to address catch wrestling itself and answer a few questions on the issue. First of all, catch wrestling is wrestling prior to it being made safe for high school and collegiate wrestling. Okay? There are some people, and again, this is extremely important. If you don't hear anything else I say, I want you to understand that every single thing I say to you for 7 years is verifiable. Everything I say to you, whether it's boxing, wrestling, MMA, whatever, it is verifiable. Do your research. Do not take my word for it. I do not want to be a superhero. I am an anti-superhero. Okay? I take it from the top and bring it right down to earth. Okay? So everything that I ever say to you, you look at any of our 400 videos, test it. Look at it. If I recommend something, test it in sparring. If I say I don't think you should try something because it's low percentage, try it about 10 times and you'll see that it may work 2 out of 10 times, so therefore it's low percentage. Okay? Everything that I say to you, you check it out. That being said, catch wrestling is actually what wrestling was in the very beginning. Okay? Proof of this is if you look at African wrestling today, if you look at Senegal, the way they wrestle in Senegal, that's what wrestling to a large extent used to be. You had strikes in original wrestling. Greece, in Africa, Greece, you had strikes, okay? Open palms, much like a pancrase, all right? If you don't know what pancrase is, look it up. Look up Bass Root and pancrase, palm strikes. You had those kind of things, and you had submissions, okay? And you had submissions. What you did not have a lot of, okay, when you talk about catch wrestling, were low singles, okay, low doubles. You didn't have a great deal of them, all right, because essentially catch wrestling was done on pavement. Catch wrestling would be done on hard floors. Most of the takedowns, a great many of the takedowns, were what we would call Greco-Roman takedowns, which are from the waist up, freestyle being from the waist down takedowns, okay? Now, what they did was to take catch wrestling and make it safe, right, for high school and the collegiate wrestling. They took the submissions out, all right, for obvious reasons if you understand how serious catch is, because catch wrestling is actually a snap or a tap or snap type of art. In other words, it's not meant to get a submission. Catch wrestling is meant to break your limb, to wrench your limb, to sprain your limb, right? To attempt to rip your limb off, right? Okay, which is not going. Your limb is on there to be on there, right? Unless you're pulled apart by a truck. But it is to that extreme. So they took those submissions out to make it safe for high school and college. Now, what is the philosophy of catch, and what is catch as catch can? Okay, catch as catch can is this. When you look at, for example, Brazilian Jiu-jitsu, most people believe you should get to position first and then go for the submission. In other words, immobilize your opponent, then go for the submission. Now, the best BJJ competitors, best BJJ fighters don't necessarily go according to that in a strict sense. But if you look at catch does not say get to position first. Catch wants to grab the limb and start the submission immediately. So when you move a certain way, they go for the submission. When you go to defend, by you defending, and this is the same way in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's the same way in any grappling art. If you pay close attention, you will see that when a person defends, they cannot defend without giving you another opportunity for submission. Okay, so to defend one arm bar, they have to put their arm in a position where you can get that arm. Or to defend the arm bar, they might have to put their neck where you can get their neck, etc., etc. Well, catch as catch can simply says this: don't necessarily wait to pin the individual down. Don't use that as the criteria for going for submission. When the opportunity is presented to you, then you go for that submission wherever you are. So in the middle of a transition from one position to the next, a catch fighter will grab the limb and go for it, rather than trying to pin the individual down. The philosophy is simple. It's very simple. There are basic techniques in catch wrestling, but overall, it is not bogged down by technique. It's not bogged down by that technique. So what do I mean? If you look at BJJ, you might say this is a Kimura, this is Americana, this is this is that, this is this is that. You do have the figure four leg lock, right? You do have the double wrist lock, and I will be talking about those things later and how they apply to something you don't know they apply to, but I will be giving you a little bit of that history. You do have locks, and you do have these basics, but the basic philosophy of catch wrestling is this: grab a limb and manipulate it in an unnatural way for the submission. That's essentially what it is, right? Don't get bogged down into technique. Grab a limb, right? Grab an arm and move it the opposite way. Don't move it into the bend. Move it away from the bend and you'll get a submission, all right? Or isolate one particular part of the body. Isolate the neck from the back and you will get a submission, okay? Twist the neck as far as it can go. Twist it beyond the shoulder. Attempt to twist it beyond the shoulder line, right? Either way, all right? And you will likely get a submission. So the philosophy of catch wrestling is, yes, we have technique, or they have technique, and that is the framework or the template of catch wrestling. But the philosophy is grab a limb the best way you can. Catch it. Catch as catch can. Catch it any way you can and manipulate that limb in the opposite way that it is meant to move, and you will get a submission. That is the basic philosophy of catch as catch can, and it is the original form of wrestling. Lastly, what one must be able to distinguish from is the carnival wrestling, right? Which are things that don't work a great deal. All right, you see people holding someone's leg and they're folding back the legs and things of that nature. There are techniques that are for show, right? Go and show. There are techniques that are for show. Those particular techniques are ones I would stay away from. But certainly their wrist locks, their neck cranks, things of that nature are second to none. And if you get a chance to work a little bit on some of the submissions, some of the pressure riding of catch wrestling, go ahead and do it. I do recommend that you stay away from leg locks. I am not a big fan of leg locks, and I don't really value a great deal of leg locks. Why? Because when you are dealing with, as far as street fighting, I don't like to be below the waist. All right, because one, if you're trying to get a leg lock, you're in front of the person's another leg. The person can kick you. These kind of things. Leg locks to me is a waste. I know many of you are caught up into these leg locks, and you love the leg locks, and especially you competitors, right? Who Hickson Gracie doesn't like, of course, right? And I agree with Hickson on that. All these, 15 trillion techniques people are trying to learn instead of trying to master 5 or 6 that you can lock in from any position. I think is the way to go. But I would stay away from the leg locks, which have now become fairly big as far as catch wrestling is concerned. So to reiterate, catch wrestling that you see today, catch as catch can, to be specific, is what original wrestling was before it was cleaned up for high school and college. The philosophy is, again, is catch as catch can. Catch it any way you can, meaning catch the limb any way you can from whatever position you can. They do have technique, but a good catch wrestler is not bogged down by technique. This is not proper technique, don't use it. I've never heard this particular submission, therefore do not use it. It does not come down to that. Essentially what it comes down to is grab a limb. Grab a limb in the middle of transition, grab a limb without transitioning. Grab a limb from the air. Grab a limb on the ground. Grab it standing up. Grab it from the cross side. Grab it from north and south. Grab from bottom scissors if you're on bottom scissors, what many of you might call a closed guard. Grab it from the top saddle, which many of you might call a full mount. Grab it from any way, manipulate that joint in a way that it's not naturally meant to be manipulated, and you will get the submission. Another example is to take the elbow and move it not into the bend, but move it outside the bend. To take the neck and try to twist it beyond the shoulder line. To try to take the neck and twist it beyond and push it back from this point. To try to do things of that nature, and you ultimately will get a submission. So it is a basic template. From that template, it is the goal. The goal is beyond the template to take a joint, catch a joint any way you can, catch as catch can, and manipulate it in the most unnatural way to get the tap or the snap. That is catch wrestling, aka catch as catch can. See you next video.